Folks, with the recent reported delays in the Everton Beachy Stoke MacDonald murder trial due to challenges with the jury, and the Director of Public Prosecutions, Ms. Paula Llewellyn, joins us now to discuss the important role a juror plays in our justice system. Good morning, ma'am. Welcome to Smile.
Good morning, Neville. Good morning,
Great to have you with
Celine.
us.
Good morning to your listeners. I haven't been here in a long time.
Yeah, great to have you with us.
Good to see you both.
Let me start by how you decide whether it's judge alone or jury. What determines that?
Well, the law allows us to go either in terms of trial in the High Court before a judge alone or judge and jury. To go before the High Court with judge alone, it has to be done by consent of both the prosecution and the defense. If we don't agree that it will be a judge alone trial, then the default position is that it goes to what the law has always allowed.
Is there a
trial by judge
is there a benefit to whether?
Well, sometimes it's a matter of strategy. It's a matter of, for the defense, getting instructions from their client as to what they would prefer. For us, sometimes we get instructions from the witnesses, and sometimes we too, looking at what we have to face on the ground, prefer in certain types of cases to go with a jury as opposed to a judge alone.
As far as you can remember in your experience, have we ever been at a point where we are, I want to say, okay, with compliance where jurors are concerned? We're buying for jurors, as far as you can remember.
Well, I have been a prosecutor for about at least 32 years. But I have been told anecdotally that in the days before you had the amendments, just like how you used to have situations where only a certain type or class, quote unquote, of people could vote, so too once upon a time it would have been members of the plantocracy and members of the intelligentsia who were able to sit as jurors. So they didn't really have issues when it came to resources for refreshment and transportation. But with adult suffrage, thankfully, one man, one vote, something like jury duty has been open to every citizen. And I believe, certainly since independence, they have sought to use the voters list. Not the voters, yes, the voters list, and I think there's now an amalgamation between the voters list and the TRN. But unfortunately, so I suspect anecdotally, there was a time when the whole issue of jurors was in a narrow, dare I say, set of people that you didn't have that problem. But of course, since the 60s and the 70s, crime and the culture and the subcultures have caused the informer for dead mentality, the lessening of an appreciation of what it takes to be a citizen. We are in a not so gentle time where values and attitudes as it relates to, good old-fashioned values like self-respect, respect for others, whether you're at school, at play, the fact that a lot of persons, in terms of the values taught by the church, no longer see the church as relevant. Right. So with that, with the rise of the dancehall culture and so many other subcultures, where respect is low on the totem pole, and in fact, it has a different meaning now, because if somebody perceives disrespect, it is passé now to go and fight. Yeah. Look what happened recently.
Yeah. Yeah. If I'm called to jury duty, I can't just say, no, I'm not coming, argument done?
No, you can't. The whole jury scenario, in terms of its administration, is dealt with at the Supreme Court by the jury clerk under the auspices of the registrar of the Supreme Court in the criminal division. What you would need to do is to write an excuse, and an assigned judge will consider it. Somebody who is assigned by the Chief Justice, or even the Chief Justice himself.
If I just say I'm not coming, what could happen?
What can happen? You could be fined. If your name is called and you're not answering, and the return for the summons shows that you indeed have been served.
Okay. So, big fine or little fine?
I feel like it's a little. I feel it's
Well, put it this way, you know, for what may be a little fine to you,
Correct.
to another man,
Correct.
may be a big fine.
Correct.
Because
So-
one has to be sensitive to the fact that persons, listen, you don't even have to be educated. You don't have to have tertiary education. You don't have to have university education. What it calls for as a juror is just to have common sense. And one thing with, I would say, a lot of Jamaicans, although some people argue that common sense is not so common.
Not so common.
But I have found in my experience that irrespective of station in life, once the juror is engaged in the process, 90% of them, if you speak to them after, they are very happy to have served and to have had the experience.
all serious offences tried by circuit Supreme Court judge sitting with a jury comprised of 12 persons in murder
That is
or
for
treason.
capital murder
right?
or treason.
And 7 for other criminal offences. So murder, manslaughter, rape, carnal abuse, robbery, arson, treason, chosen from all parishes, and the number selected varies depending largely on the case come before the circuit court.
Yes.
How much do you get paid for jury duty in Jamaica?
Well, first of all, you're not supposed to be paid.
You're not supposed to be
paid for jury duty. You get a stipend
Stipend.
to defray
Yeah, something like that.
Costs.
expenses as it relates to transportation and also refreshment. However, you used to be getting a stipend of $500 in the old days. And then in 2015, it was increased to $2,000. I have heard recently, I have called for it, and I've heard recently the Minister of Justice, Mr. Delroy Chuck, indicating that it is on the urgent list of priorities for the Ministry of Justice to make the necessary recommendations to the Ministry of Finance for that stipend to be increased from $2,000.
Who is exempt from
Per
jury
day.
duty?
And that is per day. Yes.
Who's exempt from jury duty?
Well, you would have the wives, for example, of members of the political directorate, like I think the councillors,
Okay.
MPs,
Okay.
cabinet ministers. I think you would have a lot of workers in the public service. You have teachers.
This is
And-
ministers of religion, medical
Yes.
doctors, dentists,
Yes.
vets, nurses, midwives, pharmacists,
Yes.
public servants, school teachers,
Yes.
and university and college lecturers.
That is
All,
so.
all exempt.
Retirees can serve?
Well, I think you serve up to about, is it 60 or 65?
Okay.
And these folks would be
65.
exempt because of their
The
schedule.
nature of their occupation. So when you are called to be part of the panel in a circuit court, whether in Manchester or Clarendon or Home Circuit, it is for periods of about 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, usually about 3 weeks.
Okay.
So to have the person out of that occupation for 3 weeks may be injurious to the public interest in terms of
Gotcha.
the special role
Okay.
or their remit.
Madam DPP, is there a specific way a juror is chosen? In other words, if you have a kind of trial, you say, boy, I don't want Neville Bell because...
Well, what happens is that the registrar's clerk would have the numbers and the list in respect of which number would be for which juror. And it's really by a random thing where they put their hand. In the old days, it used to be in a box with all the numbers mixed up, or they call, it's at random, and the person's name is called, and then the police would call the person's name, and usually all the jurors are seated in court. Then they would go up to the jury box to be sworn or to affirm for those who would wish not to be sworn. And then each side, the prosecution would have, like in a non-capital murder case, it would be 7 jurors. So in all other cases outside of treason and capital murder, it would be 7 jurors. So the defense would have 4 challenges if it's a case like non-capital murder or rape, where you can get at least 15 years or life.
Okay.
Or if it is like, for example, grievous sexual assault or sex with somebody under 16 or accessory after the fact to murder or any other offense, it would be 2 challenges that you would have. But at once when I was prosecuting the Donald Zeke's case, and it was the first time I saw, obviously the jury, you could see from her demeanor. So you have to use your experience, look at the type of case, look at the occupation that is announced to see, do I want to keep this juror? The defense would consult with their client, and they may say they don't like how he looks or they don't like the occupation. And when I was prosecuting the Donald Zeke's case, one juror actually, just before she was going to be sworn, she said, objection. It is really the attorneys who are supposed to say objection.
And then
objection you sit, and then you come out of the jury box. But nobody was laughing because it was a very serious case.
Quite so.
But she was excused.
I know this is not why you came this morning, ma'am, but they've been giving you some difficulty about whether you should stay, whether you should go home, or how long you must stay. Where is
Who
that
has
now?
been giving me? I don't have any difficulty.
Where is that
Listen,
now?
I have had a long career in the public service. That is always what I wanted to be. I have never been the type of person to be triggered by money. I've had very, very, very prominent Queen's Counsel in my very early days asking me to join their firm. But being the daughter of a nurse, it has always been giving service above self. I talk about it all the time. And I have always tried to work hard and not be deflected or distracted by what I call static. When you're a public figure, and by the way, I'm not on social media, sometimes I make very difficult decisions about some very high-profile matters, but it's done according to law and one's experience, and I have a wonderful set of people that I have been privileged to have worked with over the years, Crown Counsel, prosecutors. I've been privileged to have prosecuted some very notorious persons. I've prosecuted against some great lawyers. I have appeared before some great judges. And at the end of the day, it's always about service. I really don't allow myself to be deflected. The authorities, I understand, passed a law. I had been preparing to, if you ask anybody in my office, I'd even put up some pictures that I was gifting to the office. And the law has been changed. And having consulted my family and my very close friends, I have elected to stay on for another 2 years to continue to serve.
Thank you for your service, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Neville, for thanking me. And all the very best. I mean, look at you. Look at you. And you are still like fine wine.
Thank you
doing
very much.
so very well. Thank you for your service.
Ooh. Should I leave?
And you also.
I should go. I feel like that was a move.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
Again, ma'am.
You both are very valued members of the media fraternity.
Thank you very much.
Again,
Means a lot.
Yes.
It's good to hear it. Director of Public Prosecutions, Paula Llewellyn. Coming up, we're helping children to learn from failure. Very important lesson. We'll be right back with that after this.
Some come.